by the Rocky Mountains, the American West is famous for the breathtaking scenery of its national parks. An entire modern mythology unfolds: the conquering of the West, the Indian Wars, road trip movies, and westerns. But for archaeologists, Utah's canyon country holds treasures even more fascinating than the landscape in which they were found. The thousands of often remarkably well-preserved symbols and figures which decorate cliffs and rock faces. Here, rather than being hidden in the bottom of dark caves, artwork is displayed in the open air. This art, about which we know very little, dates back to the birth of humanity. Left out of art history books, this rich artistic heritage deserves to finally be studied properly. In North America, the native Indian tribes left behind a strange array of silhouettes and mysterious symbols, both painted and engraved onto the canyon walls. Some believe they recognize the depiction of dinosaurs and extraterrestrial life, feeding some of the most fantastic theories out there. Paul Bahn and Jean-Louis Lequellec have dedicated their careers as archaeologists to the study of this outdoor art. For over 30 years, they have traveled the world and visited some of the most spectacular places on the planet. Following the footsteps of our distant ancestors. Together, Englishman Paul and Frenchman Jean-Louis have come to visit these engravings to try and uncover their secrets. Paul and Jean-Louis have planned a long route, starting from Salt Lake City. The first stop is in the east, in Vernal, to see the Three Kings panel. They will then go down to Red Rock Country in southern Utah. This canyon country has some key sites, such as Kachina Bridge, Cane Creek Canyon, Black Dragon Canyon, and Horseshoe Canyon. At each location, the archaeologists will find fascinating engraved and painted panels. But before that, let's not forget the enigma of the engravings in the winding 9-mile canyon.
There's the panel.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I've been dreaming of seeing this panel for so long. It's famous, but also very, very strange. It's packed full of things that are really difficult to explain.
Absolutely. It has some really curious characters in it. Sure, you can recognize a small hunting scene on the left with an archer aiming for an animal, but then the people are really quite strange. Heads but no faces, or just with two big eyes like that. And sort of antennae, like those in Tassili with their round heads, nicknamed the Tassili Martians. They were seen as ancient astronauts.
Yes, I've seen the same thing in Australia. You see human beings with what look like helmets or antennae or something like that on their heads, which have also been interpreted as astronauts or even extraterrestrials.
Why are these characters engraved into a rock in the middle of an arid canyon? What is the meaning behind this scene? Are they visions from a nightmare or an extraterrestrial chronicle? We're not going to look at the graffiti of a madman, nor are we in a sci-fi movie. We're in the heart of the country's largest rock art site. 9 Mile Canyon is an extraordinary outdoor museum. In this immense limestone gorge, around 40 kilometers long, nearly 10,000 paintings and engravings, called petroglyphs, have been counted. This morning, Paul is meeting with Steve Sims, a Southwest American rock art specialist with over 30 years' experience. It was he who suggested the two archaeologists visit the Martian panel, as there could be an entirely different explanation. Steve Sims is an archaeologist at the University of Utah. According to him, far from being extraterrestrial tales, these engravings are the testimony of the very first inhabitants of North America.
So as you know, Steve, a lot of people, especially on the web these days, look at rock art from around the world. They see strange figures in the Tassili in the Sahara, sometimes in Australia, and they see Martians or extraterrestrials with antennae coming out of their heads. And this would seem to be a classic example here. So what's your opinion of that?
I think it's best to attribute it to the indigenous people of the region, for starters.
Yes.
And let the claims of the other stand on evidence.
So how would you interpret these strange things sticking out of the heads here?
Well, this panel is distinctly Fremont. You have the trapezoidal figurines, the antenna. Notice it looks like actual individuals. I think it's characteristic of the Fremont's origins.
At the beginning, you said the word antenna, but we believe maybe it's another thing. It's not really antennas. What is it?
They're not antennas.
Are they wearing feathers?
They look like antennas, especially when they have wires.
Yes.
Most likely these are headdresses with animal antlers in them. There are archaeological artifacts from Fremont country of visors made of woodpecker feathers that you see in the rock art, and similar artifacts that were used in the early 20th century in pueblos in the Southwest. These strange things sticking out of the head in this case have archaeological and ethnographic reference. And then there are historical photographs from the Southwest, from Acoma Pueblo, for example, of deer dancers wearing identical artifacts in that historic period. So you have continuity from thousands of years ago to the living Native Americans of the United States today.
Yeah.
The conquerors of the American West included explorers and historians who quickly sought to recompose native Indian history. That of the tribes still present in the area, and also of those who no longer existed. General Fremont of the Confederacy even gave his name to this mysterious people, the authors of the Petroglyphs of 9 Mile Canyon. But even at the time, none of the Fremont people were around to testify. Their story seems to be suddenly cut short around the 13th century. Archaeologists collected just a few traces of the disappeared tribe. convinced they had left no descendants. The disappearance of the Fremont tribe and the so-called Martians are not the only enigmas in Utah. There is another intriguing engraving over 300 kilometers further south in the Bridges National Park. Under the Kachina Bridge, in a setting worthy of any Western movie, Paul and John Luik meet up with Sally Cole, an expert in the region's rock art. Sally wants to show her old friend Paul Bahn an engraving that is becoming one of the most famous and most talked about pieces of American patrimony. It shows, apparently, a dinosaur.
So what are we looking at here?
We're looking at, see the arch, the arched pect area?
Yes.
Bit like that. That was perceived as a head of a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you know, a large sauropod. So that was perceived as that. I think with the original documentation that was done here back in the 1970s or 80s, they were just drawing, quote, what they saw. So they looked at that and they said, okay, it's a face. It's an animal face and a neck. And when they came on down, they just drew it as if it was one solid thing. So that's what we wound up with. Apparently it just spread as evidence of, you know, dinosaurs being present. Archaeologically, we tell people when you don't see it, don't draw it.
Yes, yes.
But those are just abraded or areas where the surface has, you know, been coated with a mineral and it is leaching out from inside the sandstone.
Yeah.
So together it creates this image of this animal tail. So it's a great panel. That's a basket maker style figure, the very large. So that one is very well dated, relatively speaking. So we could look at that figure and say, more or less, it's 2,000 years old.
For Sally Cole, the dinosaur at Kachina Bridge is just an illusion created by the coloration and calcification of the rock around a previous engraving. Plus, the style of neighboring figures enables the calculation of its age, putting it at around 2,000 years old. Could we imagine that dinosaurs still existed 2,000 years ago? The theory clearly has one major flaw. Dinosaurs became extinct 65 million years ago, according to scientists. Quite some time before the appearance of man. To accept such a theory is to believe that man and dinosaur lived alongside one another. It also means the negation of over 2 centuries of scientific research.
It's a special sort of archaeology, rock art, because the images appeal to your senses. I'd say the most important thing for archaeologists is to study rock images like any other archaeological object. Like a chiseled axe, an arrowhead, or a piece of pottery. You have to focus on dating the object, situating it in the evolution of cultures, and so on. The challenge is that here, images are involved. And our minds work in such a way that when we see an image, we automatically try to give it a meaning. Our solution is to attribute any sort of meaning to it, to avoid the question of the total absence of one.
This profound need for meaning has fueled several schools of thought. This is notably the case for the creationists, for whom the creation of the world is explained in the Genesis chapter of the Bible. But not all creationists take the Bible word for word. Not all claim the world was created in 7 days. Like Dennis Swift, some believe, however, that the chronologies put forward as scientific truths by the evolutionists are also incorrect. Dennis Swift takes Paul and John Luik to a site where he believes he can prove his theory. It's a canyon that's very difficult to reach, a true sanctuary with an evocative name, Black Dragon Canyon. For Dennis, there's no doubt. This image shows a pterodactyl, a flying reptile from the Jurassic Age, some 150 million years ago.
In this beautiful sandstone setting on this cliff, there is a aerial leviathan, a soaring out of the pages of the past is this winged wonder. And the Indians were masters at putting these drawings and settings that would evoke the image of the animal flying or running. And in this canyon, the place that has the waviest sandstone is this spot right here that we can find. And so it looks like it's hovering right here, this pterosaur.
But my feeling is that the upper part of it is disconnected from the rest of it, and it looks like a human being looking to the right with the two arms parallel, and the neck of the dragon, or don't know what, are his legs. You see, he's like this. What do you think?
Yes, but when you look at it very closely and photograph it, then the neck comes like this, as a curving shape. It comes all the way down, curves, and connects to the body, and from there the wings come out, and then the wings on this side have claws, and only pterosaurs and pteranodons had claws.
Yes, I think it's your reading, but...
If we have an isolated case and say, that's one, but what about the others? They also did this in other places, and it looks very similar. The more we discover about the fossil record, we also see that their petroglyphs were correct and our interpretation was wrong. In all Indian groups, more than 500 Indian tribes in the United States, all of them talk about the thunderbird. And the thunderbird wasn't a fossil they were looking at. They believe they lived contemporaneously with the thunderbird.
After hearing about dinosaurs and a flying dragon frightening the native Indians, Paul and John Louis agree that the testimony of a descendant would be invaluable. The rock art in Utah is so strange and its creators so difficult to imagine that even the most extreme theories thrive here, in an America hungry for fiction and myth.
I like that wagon on the roof there. Funny little thing. Whoa, they've got every brand of crisp here.
I'm just after water, so
Yeah?
just normal colored water.
Yes, yes.
Ideally. But look, there isn't any. Wow, strawberry.
Strawberry. Look here, they've got Sasquatch.
Ah, Sasquatch. That's the wild American man.
Bigfoot.
That's it, Bigfoot. That's great. Great American mythology, yeah.
I didn't know you could eat Bigfoot steaks.
Amazing, really. The wild giant creature from North America. It's a little inspired by American Indian mythology.
Maybe we'll see one.
Yeah, great.
Perhaps they're so common here that they eat them.
It's become a brand. We might have to find something real to eat, though, because...
Yes, we should, but there's just too much to choose from.
Right.
The giant gash of Black Dragon Canyon fades with the night, untroubled by any dinosaur ghosts. Waiting to find a Native American representative, Paul and John Louis can't wait to get back on a more rational path. Today, Marvin Rowe, one of the world's most reputed experts in dating outdoor prehistoric art, has responded to his friend Paul's invitation. At over 75 years old, He has bravely climbed up to the foot of the figures armed with a portable spectrometer, the ideal tool for analyzing a material's composition, in this case, the chemical elements found on the canyon wall.
It takes 30 seconds to make the measurement, which is kind of amazing if you think about it, that you can do a chemical analysis in the field in 30 seconds.
So it's done by X-rays, is that right?
It's done by X-rays. It's done by X-rays being shot out of the front of the gun, encountering the elements in the paint and in the wall, and then sending X-rays back, which are characteristic of the element that we're interested in. The iron there is quite large, as we assumed it would be, since it's a painted area. It's about 24,000 counts on this instrument. And now I'll go to an area over here somewhere. Okay.
The people who see this as a pterodactyl believe that this is an entire figure with the neck joining the body here, so we need to know what the reading is from that area there.
Okay, and then I read, there's no iron there, so clearly there's no pigment there, so it's clearly not painted between here and where it starts on the tail.
Oh, okay.
So it's hard to connect those
Right,
two
yes.
in any realistic way.
Vanishes.
And
Yes.
that took, what, a minute and a half?
Yes.
So if you could really want to study it in detail, it would take a
Right.
couple of days, but already it's clear that there's no paint
Yeah.
here to there.
Oh,
so.
okay.
The spectrometric analysis of the wall quite categorically contradicts the theory of a single figure, and thereby also the existence of the famous pterodactyl. And when John Weeks studies the photos of the famous flying monster on his computer, his visual analysis software produces an image that the creationists probably wouldn't find to their taste. But how do we approach the question of these figures' meaning? How can we know what culture they belong to? And how can we imagine what their creators were like? Paul and John Week have learned that many eminent ethnologists believe today that the Hopi Indians are the possible inheritors of the art found in Utah. To be able to speak to one of them would be a unique experience for these two European archaeologists. Thanks to Don Montoya, the archaeologist at the Federal Bureau of Land Management, Paul and John Week may have found the right contact. Today, Don is bringing Bertram Savadawa, a Hopi Indian from northern Arizona, to the site. Here in Utah, he is far from his territory, several hundred kilometers from his reservation. In front of the Black Dragon Canyon figures, Bertram's presence immediately bears fruit. He feels familiar with what he's looking at. He makes the same observation. It is definitely not any sort of flying creature.
My understandings on different symbols may be coinciding with along rivers and streams, that perhaps maybe even this particular feature on this right portion would definitely be more of the description of the bends and curves of the canyons coming in from this direction, where definitely when you first come in, and it is very narrow, this would be more of that description of the landscape, and actually maybe again just the actual path to come in as part of the confirmations of the migrations or travels of the ancestors.
The small team have made their way through the twists and turns of the canyon, examining these painted figures. Sadly, for the most part, vandalized and drawn over in chalk, despite this being forbidden. But near the main site, another panel immediately attracts Bertram's attention. At the end of the day, he can't resist going back for another look. Paul and John Week understand at once that Bertram is feeling something rare and intense.
Yep, this is a very, very unique particular panel. And looking at the different symbols definitely reminds me of clan symbols. The bear paw for the Bear Clan, even a rare viewing of a symbol that represents the spider web, so Spider Clan. And the bird talon marks could be of maybe crane or heron. Clan symbols. Even shows that there is the instrument of the rattle that is portrayed up there. And even my grandfather's symbol of the Sun Clan, of the sun symbol. So it is really amazement, awe-striking to see these symbols further away from our main reservation land area. I guess in a sense maybe it was of the territory boundaries in earlier times. Yeah, it's really amazement. I guess a little overwhelming now, because it is. Yeah, a lot of clan symbols definitely left here.
And on the right, the two small black trees, or I don't know what, below?
Okay, yes, yeah, below the wavy line segments down here. To me, and actually coming here and first seeing of the symbols, I felt very connected because I am a member of the corn clan, so to me those are symbols of the corn plant. So to me it is an ancestral connection to understand my ancestors also traveled and passed through here.
It looks like the one you have on your ring.
Yes, yeah. Personally, with my personal jewelry, I do have, yes, that corn plant on there. So looking at this and looking at those two symbols, yeah, very strikingly resembling of the corn plant.
The figures from Black Dragon Canyon speak loudly to Bertram, recalling his teaching, his roots, and his very Hopi identity.
Good morning, Zava.
Good morning.
Hello, Sava. How is it?
Yep.
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
800 kilometers from his reservation, he rediscovers the footsteps of his distant ancestors and the intertwining of territories over which they traveled. The mysterious Fremont people did have descendants after all. The American Indian vision, which seems to communicate with the landscape itself, mapping it, marking the tribal presence. Has this vision been passed down over the years to today? The journey now takes a different turn. Paul and John Week feel that they are finally getting close to the original artists. They are delighted. Bertram has proposed that he continue the journey with them. Admittedly, once again this becomes a question of beliefs. But this time, they are those of the people who undoubtedly imagined and produced the artwork. Today, they are back at 9 Mile Canyon to examine together one of the most famous panels of the region, the Great Hunt.
We just tell basically maybe this particular canyon wouldn't have been used to maybe drive the game down from this southeast direction, and in this very narrow of this section would have been the location where the hunters would come and, you know, like ambush of the rams and the game animals in this area.
And by the way, do you have in the Hopi mythology something like a master of the animals? Some kind of divinity who owns the animals?
In our culture, we do understand of an actual female figure that we refer to as the mother of all game. Mm-hmm. So again, with that figure, it could be male, or maybe it could have been portraying of the mother of game figure.
Cette scène est généralement interprétée par les archéologues comme une scène de chasse.
This is generally interpreted by archaeologists as a hunting scene, but I'm a little skeptical because of this large central figure with horns and no arms, standing up and dominating the scene. What's he doing in a hunting scene? So I asked our friend Bertram what he thought, that it might be a hunting scene, in the middle of which suddenly the master of the hunt appears. That's something more than just a hunting scene. That's full-on mythology.
C'est tout à fait autre chose qu'une scène de chasse. Et là, on est en pleine mythologie.
Jean-Louis feels that Bertram is able to detect the mythological dimension of this ancient Indian art. Impatient to get as close to it as possible, Jean-Louis suggests they go to Cane Creek Canyon, near the town of Moab. This is where fans of SUV vehicles from throughout the country come to play. Indifferent to the traffic above, as if it has been placed there deliberately, a large round rock is decorated with an enigmatic childbirth scene.
I was struck when we arrived at the birthing rock. It's a scene that's difficult to interpret. One of the elements of which is seen by archaeologists as possibly representing childbirth, or perhaps a man with a strange phallus, or maybe an androgynous person. Really, we have no idea. But our Hopi friend, Bertram Savadawa, looked at it and said right away, it's the myth of the origin of the world. It's the creation of the world myth, the heart of Hopi mythology, which says that, in the beginning, men lived underground. They heard noises up on the surface, became curious, and went up to see what was there. Once they surfaced, they split up in 4 directions, learned different languages, and that's the origin of all the populations on Earth.
Et là, ils ont acquis différents langages, et c'est l'origine de toutes les populations du globe. Et donc, lui, immédiatement,
so immediately he recognized that scene on the rock. I'd never have seen it, of course. But once you know that Bertram belongs to a culture with a really long oral tradition behind it, of which he is to a large extent custodian, there is every reason to believe that this image could have something to do with the Hopi myth of the emergence of the first men.
Avec le mythe de l'émergence de la première humanité.
I think rock art is a phenomenon that links humankind. It's found in almost every country in the world, and obviously there are differences in style and technique and content, and of course they drew the animals that they knew in each place. But even so, I think it reflects a need that's shared by humans everywhere and that expressed itself in more or less the same way. So it forms part of our behavior, the behavior of our species. So yes, it's universal.
Thanks to Bertrand, Paul and Jean-Louis have been able to understand the tribal symbols, identify divine figures, and even evoke the founding myths of the Hopi culture. There is one aspect that they have not yet engaged with: tribal Indian rituals. Will Bertrand be able to decipher the strange painted silhouettes that rise up at the intersection of Thompson and Sego canyons? These tall, dominating figures represent another fascinating singularity of Utah's rock art. Are they warriors, chiefs, gods?
So Bertram, this is the first time you've been to this amazing site. Is there anything at first sight that strikes you as being interpretable in terms of what you're familiar with Hopi symbolism?
Some of these figures that do have the large eyelets, these 2 in particular of the conical-shaped heads, do remind me of the twin warriors in our culture. And the older brother's name is pronounced Pokanghoya, and the younger brother Palingauhoya. And they were ones that were instrumental in giving guidance to ancestors as they were traveling, exploring the earth and the land. And obviously the snake symbols would again represent a snake clan, or, you know, coming into this particular area. First time seeing this, it is awe-striking, and I really feel that ancestral connection to this particular panel here that we're viewing. It just feels like it is a big puzzle, and within your lifetime you're given pieces of it, or in other words, elders will just not blandly share everything and say this was how it was, you know. Identity, individual, of clan, society, initiation, whatever, then you get a little bit more instilled to it. So myself as well, I'm still getting pieces of the puzzle and still putting it all together.
Utah and its neighboring states of the American West cover immense, wild, and largely unpopulated areas. Over the course of seemingly endless journeys, the small team changed their way of thinking to match the dimensions of such space. They are walking in the footsteps of Bertram's ancestors, who journeyed tirelessly over this infinite landscape. Their investigation is transformed by this daily physical contact, and a connection is rebuilt between the Earth and its lost people. Paul and John Luick are dizzied by this size and scale. It's no longer just about paintings or engravings on rocks. The thought is of space itself and the emotions it evokes among those who cross it. Even after Bertram leaves, Paul and John Luick decide to continue the journey. Drawn like magnets by the magical landscape, testing their limits in the desire to explore every canyon. This is how they ended up in a breathtaking setting where Utah's Sistine Chapel of Indian art is hidden, the Great Gallery of Horseshoe Canyon. Paul and John Luick have arranged to meet with a team of scientists from the University of Utah, which has for several years been running a dating program on figures in the famous canyon. Professor Joel Pedersen and researcher Reza Sobati have come back to the site to take new rock samples. Jerry Spangler, a specialist in Southwest American archaeology, has accompanied them. After hours of walking, Paul and John Luick arrive from the south, close to the main gallery. The heat is suffocating. Burning sand dries the eyes, throat, everything. But here, walking and fatigue are part of the experience. They change perception. Eventually, everyone meets up on time at the foot of the most emblematic figures of American Indian art.
So this is the site. Yeah, this is it.
Joel and Reza plan to take their latest rock samples. Jerry, enthralled, is left to rediscover the phantom-like silhouettes decorating the rock face.
This particular site is kind of the type site for the Barrier Canyon style of rock art. We believe that this dates to from about 1,500 years ago to about 2,500 or 3,000 years ago, or the Archaic period of time when people were hunting and gathering, moving around constantly for their food. But as part of that seasonal round, they developed a very unique and quite stunning rock art tradition. The one that is quite visually stunning to most people is they look up and they see the sheer size of it. Some of these images, this image over here is called the Holy Ghost, is over 2 meters high. It does resonate artistically with people who know nothing about rock art. They see it and they appreciate it. What we see here today is just a tiny fraction of what was here anciently. And it is a tremendous reminder of just how bold and colorful prehistoric societies were.
So when you say art that's this old, you've given us a sort of ballpark figure for the age of these things. Is there any way to pin it down more accurately?
There are ways to do it. There are radiocarbon techniques where tiny flakes of the pigment can be sent in for dating purposes. The last I heard is they had tried it here and could get no dates.
Generally speaking, archaeology has frequently ignored or even belittled rock art because it couldn't be dated. And so it was just images, sort of pretty pictures in the landscape, but it wasn't taken seriously because one couldn't really work with these images as archaeological data.
Archaeological specialists in outdoor art have for a long time been deprived of specific dates for the figures they discover. The development of new physiochemical techniques gives regular bursts of hope, but they are, for the most part, disappointing. This time, however, they are looking more promising.
The first technique we started using is taking advantage of really simple cross-cutting relations that you can see. And if you look up at the Great Gallery, one thing, there's the beautiful panel of art itself, but then to the left of it, you see this pile of sediment.
Yes.
And that pile of sediment can be correlated and traced up and down the canyon, where we've mapped and studied it, and it actually tells us about the stream's history. And so one nice thing, we can link the river history of how it's cut the canyon to figure out when this alcove was first exposed in the first place so that people could paint on it. So one of our first constraints is, when was this alcove first available for people to actually produce art on it? And that is linked to the river's history of incising the canyon. Another thing you can notice if you look up is that some of the characters have actually been removed in a rockfall.
Yes.
And you can see a figure there, the lower part of which has actually been removed.
Yeah.
And one of the approaches with OSL we've taken is to date the rockfall, and that's a relatively new technique.
This dating technique is based on a property of certain minerals such as quartz luminescence. The crystals in quartz trap electrons in the floors of their structure. When the quartz is hit with light, these electrons move to the interior of the crystal towards a superior level. When the quartz is no longer lit, these electrons descend to a lower level, emitting light themselves. This is luminescence. Nowadays, scientists know how to measure the duration of this process and thereby calculate for how long the quartz hasn't received light. But in order for this to be possible, a fallen rock is needed, of which at least one face could no longer receive light.
So we had a situation that the rock was exposed for some time, and then it was removed and buried. So what we did was that we took advantage of this rockfall event, which was very fortunate in our case, that we took a sample from the buried side of the boulder, and then we found out that, that this boulder was buried for 900 years. And that means that these rock arts must have been created sometime before that.
Reza's new technique makes possible, by evaluating the luminescence, not on the surface but deep within the rock, the estimation of the duration of time it has been exposed to the light. Using this technique, it has been determined that the principal rock face was exposed and thereby made available to artists 1,600 years ago. The paintings at Horseshoe Canyon are therefore between 900 and 1,600 years old. The new dating techniques based on luminescence seem to offer a very promising lead. A key weapon to be used in resolving the often lively debates about the age of figures and the people who created them. In the heart of this canyon, Paul and Jean-Louis have been able to connect the visions of American Indian culture with modern-day technology. This trip to Utah has been as rich in discoveries as in emotion. Because, for the archaeologist who studied art, emotion counts almost as much as scientific progress. Research is fueled by wonder. It seems that the outlook of the American Indians was, before anything else, linked to the necessity of transferring vital knowledge within a community and territory. Today, just like yesterday, the land doesn't cease to inspire new and powerful forms of expression. In the 1970s, a new school of art developed that linked landscapes and their transformations. It was called land art, and has been born in the vast space of the American West. Utah still shows the marks of land art's first big surge. Patricia Johansson belongs to this first generation of land artists, rubbing shoulders notably with Robert Smithson, the creator of the spiral jetty that curls over the Great Salt Lake.
The amazing thing about this project to me is to see how related it is to its context, how carefully the site was chosen. It's an extremely beautiful site. Very definitely both land art and rock art are very much related to appropriation of territory and also selection of specific territory. It isn't just any territory, it's the territory you choose. You know, we were all mining art history texts and petroglyph texts and so on. And so, I mean, the spiral is another universal symbol that all cultures can relate to. It becomes like an ancient ruin. Whereas I think what Smithson's idea is that people would come 1,000 years from now, look at this very iconic work and say, oh, what could it have been? What could it have been made for? Very much the way we speak about rock art. I thought that was a brilliant comment by the Hopi man. Please don't consider this just art. In a way, pointing out that there are many other ways to view rock art.
So the immense expanses of Utah reveal a permanent connection between landscape and human communities. The sheer scale of natural space has inspired powerful art in all eras. Thanks to archaeologists, we are able to discern key sites all over the planet. Countless yet fragile, rock art sites are one of the most precious treasures of humanity. Sources of questions and imagination, they help us to catch a glimpse of the path trodden by our species over thousands of years. This art invites us to follow their steps and take the road to new lands.
ya pakam duwa kachiang kaita hisat sinom muti sinom yang kuktota. Ovin the Bible ma au kwakwata ni Bible ma itamay lolmat ang piang itamay tsami ma yang kaita ma haka kuktota yang yorikya. Ovin the Bible kwakwata ni itam yapi suswe yung makita katsi elka yan. Suswe yung makita memo itatim. Uyong makita katsi elka yak sokya wate